Today's show is brought to you by HomebrewSupply.com. Homebrew Supply is your one-stop shop for brew day ingredients, recipes, equipment, and more. Take advantage of everyday low pricing and everyday flat rate shipping only at HomebrewSupply.com. Go to HomebrewSupply.com right now and use our promo code HHH to get 5% off your order. HomebrewSupply.com. Let us help make your brew day better.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Hello and welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today I'm joined by the Director of Operations at HomebrewSupply.com, Mr. Ladik Joe Ermis. Joe, my friend, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. It's been a little while.
It has been a while. I'm good. I've besides that flub. So the ongoing inside joke with people who listen. I mean, if you just listen to a few episodes, you know I say I don't edit the shows are very minimal. I couldn't tell you the last time I did a hard edit. I'm not gonna obviously edit that part out, but in my mind, I've said that line a million times. I've said, go to the website, do this or this, and all the lights are now freaking out in my office.
I can see, that's pretty wild. Poltergeist.
This whole episode's already going to hell in a handbasket. I put these hue lights up in my office, and let's see if that helps out at all. We'll see. I'll keep my controller near. I'm having issue with these hue lights, and I go on the forums, and people are like, "No, it's you. It's you. It's never the hue.
User error.
Yeah, it can't be the hue. It has to be you." I'm like, no. I think the hue are giving me some issues. No, it is you. That's what I said.
What, you can control like the dimness, and it's just kind of fluttering.
Well, that's the first time that's happened. Sometimes what'll happen is random light, like they have lighting profiles on it, and you can set like the mood. And I don't know, I got them because they were on sale for dirt cheap at Best Buy. Because right at the beginning of the lockdown, when everyone was like, "The world's going to hell," I was like, "Well, I'm going to install some nice lights." Everyone's freaking out about COVID. I just want some nice lighting in my office, and didn't actually spend that much money on it. And but yeah, they have like lighting profiles, and every now and then it would switch on its own to a profile. And I was like, well, okay, whatever. I guess that'll work for now. And it had been good for a while. That is literally the first time that's happened.
Yeah,
who knows?
That's pretty wild.
This office I'm in is a garage that my father-in-law helped me convert. So I wonder if my father-in-law did shoddy wiring. I mean, I'll blame anyone else other than me for the issue happening. But yeah, again, I'm not going to edit that out either. I am lazy, but also I need the time, guys. We need the time on the episode.
Hey, that's premium content.
That's what you're paying for. Oh wait, it's free. But anyway, it has been a while, man. I see you when I go up there. The last time I saw you was when we did the presentation for HomebrewCon online, which, by the way, thank you for doing the moderation more or less in the chat room. I was impressed that there was so many people that were watching it live and present. And how many people were commenting. Because when I asked you to do it, I figured like, I don't want it to be awkward and he's just ended up in there and no one's asking any questions. Because it's not because I'm self-deprecating. I just thought, who the hell's going to watch us talk about, it's like Todd talking about this show. When I give him the download numbers every week, he goes, "What? Who are these people?" And he's like, "Are you paying Chinese farm bots to click and just act like?" I was like, "Yes, that's exactly why all the feedback comes from symbols and stuff."
No, there was a good turnout. Well, you guys did an awesome job. It was packed full of really good information. So I think it all went real well. And yeah, we did a little kind of kumbaya afterwards at Todd's house. It was good.
It was a ton of fun, and that's usually the context that you get to hang out with you, so it's always enjoyable. But totally. Since we've last seen each other, I haven't even asked you, what have you, I mean, obviously it's been busy at work, but what have you been brewing? Have you even brewed at all since then?
Well, I was just finishing up a beer at that time. And it was like, we may have kegged it like either the day before, or like maybe like a couple days before that actually took place. And it was that cream ale that Zach and I brewed together. I put mine on blackberry puree. And we still got some of that going in the fridge, but I haven't brewed since then. So it's been a minute. But James and I have actually been kind of talking about doing something with using kaviking and making something. We don't know exactly what yet, but that's kind of in the works.
The temperature is right for it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. We both did. He did a different version of a cream ale like a week or two after us. And it turned out close. It was really neat trying them side by side over at Todd's and kind of, cause there were some subtle differences, but you could actually, you could have, it was a perceived flavor change or difference in flavor. So that was fun. And we may do that too when we do this kavik. We may, depending on what we do, like I may dry hop mine, and we'll see kind of what kind of impact that has in comparison to not dry hopping it, that kind of thing.
And I know you're gonna be on that episode of Recipe Recap once next week. I'm coming up Thursday, Friday when Todd gets back in town,
right?
And because your bottles are there in his fridge, a bottle of your blackberry puree, and then the one that Zach just did on just normal cream ale. And then
we have James's too,
and we're gonna do a whole episode on just cream ale.
Sweet.
Which is a great segue for me to remind people, because I've been called out. They're like, "You've been saying y'all been recording episodes." So the reason why I'm recording this on this workstation, different backdrop and all that, my workstation computer that was my primary for many years. With all the data on it, because I don't have a centralized backup server, I'm going to remedy that after all this. It died. The motherboard died. And getting parts right now during COVID is really hard. And so there's been a delay on, I needed a new power supply, new motherboard, and a new chipset. And the motherboard is supposed to come in yesterday. It was supposed to come in yesterday. The guy who's helping me do it, who helped me build the rig I'm on right now, is like, man, they tell me one thing and they keep pushing it back, and it's been like 3 weeks, right? It literally broke right before I left to go do HomebrewCon. So however long ago HomebrewCon was, and it's like everybody wants parts right now. Like everyone's working from home.
The computer you had brought up to Todd's and had there was that was the one you're on now.
Yes, that's the newest one. Which thank God we got that, because that was only 2 weeks old at that time.
Right,
Todd, and funny enough, Todd,
crazy how that works out.
Isn't it nuts? So Todd's the one who recommended, like, hey, because we've been doing all these 4K videos on the new Blackmagic design pocket cinema camera that we bought, and and I was able to edit on the other rig, but it was the process wasn't as intuitive, and I had to do what's called like editing by proxy, and not to bore people because this isn't about that on this show, but it was he was like, why don't we just, the podcast has some money in the bank, why don't we just buy you a new rig? I was like, that's very generous, Mr. Burns. And so we did, and like I said, 2 weeks later, my other rig
it's so weird how that happens.
Weird,
like that in life.
But I'm glad, like I'm having to get by trying to download backups that I had to various like Dropbox. Oh yeah, we did the backup there, and Google Drive, and I used Backblaze at one point, it turns out, so I was able to get some files to continue doing my job. But anyway, it has been a crazy time since 2020. Just period. 2020 has been a nut job year. But it
has.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to coming up there next week to do another episode of Recipe Recaps that I can actually film and edit on this machine, and we don't need like all the footage from the episodes that haven't been published yet. I don't have access to. So that's what has been the delay. But anyway, that's my. And
then you go on vacation the week after that?
I do.
Or
me and James, not together.
Nice.
He won't admit together. But I'm gonna tell people like, yeah, we planned this. He's real. He's embarrassed by me. James doesn't like talking about me. I'm going to go visit him. I know where he's staying. He doesn't know where my beach house is, but I know where he's staying. So I'm going to knock on his door with some Kolsch and be like, hey, man, you're going to let me in, which I do. I'd sent out a question to people because I always take a case of Fru when I go to the beach for sure. And last year I took a case of alt beer from Altstadt, and it's not bad. It's just not Schlussel, and it's not my favorite alt. So this year I was like, oh, what should I take? I got a lot of good recommendations from people, especially the Natty Light recommendations. Those very helpful.
White Claw.
That was a good suggestion. I ended up, so far I have room in my fridge for another beer. I went and got a case of Pilsner Urquell. I love
Nice.
it. I know. I mean, I'm too predictable. I like I'm just gonna just crispy boys I can crush on the beach. That's what I'm envisioning when I'm there. My wife, you know, when we go to South Padre is where we usually go for our beach trip. I'll start drinking earlier than the average bear, you know, for
Sure.
I mean, not
Or earlier than normal.
earlier
like a
than I
normal-
would at home. Yeah.
Right,
So I'll start
right.
at lunchtime and on. And she's like, you know, you're on like by dinner time. She's like, that's a lot of beer you've had. I'm like, but they're all low ABV.
Sure,
That's why I buy low ABV for the beach. I'm not crushing like some 8% IPA or Belgian triple or whatever.
And it's not like 8 beers within a couple hours. You know, it's stretched out over the whole afternoon and evening. You know.
No. It's within 1 hour.
Well, it's 24 beers within 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's stretched out.
Joe,
over
do
3
the
hours.
math, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I hope if Governor Abbott shuts our state down, I'm just fingers crossed that they don't actually shut the beach down, because we can just walk right there. I don't mind social distancing at the beach. I don't go there for other people. I don't want to be near people.
I mean, I'm not an expert, obviously, but it's like outdoors, I think, is one of the biggest benefits. You know, it's not supposed to, it's pretty hard to get it contracted and it spread it outdoors, you know. So hopefully, it works out for you.
Yeah, fingers crossed, because again, when we go to the beach, I'm annoyed when someone sets up 30 feet near me, much less than 6 feet. If someone, the beach is so big, when people set up anywhere near me, I'm such an old curmudgeon. I'm like, what are they doing? Like, look at all this beach space. Why are they there?
You gotta crank the music up on your speakers as they start unpacking.
That's right. I do need to. You're
Can't
right.
spoil the neighbors, man.
Yeah,
Can't
or
spoil the
get my
neighbors.
beer belly out and start rubbing my belly button like, oh, they look pretty.
Just watching them set up.
Just like oh, that looks expensive. Yeah. But
Some
yes.
pretty lips you got there.
Yeah, that's what pretty. I would say that my wife would leave me, but all right. So real quick before we get into the show, which we have a great show, I'll explain it here in a little bit. I do have a little bit of small talk. There's still a recipe and keg sale going on kegconnection.com. There's a keg kit sale ending this week on Homebrew Supply, and then I believe it's transitioning right into a different kind of keg sale for Homebrew Supply, where the details will go out in an email soon. Our recipes for our July Patreon, the options first, I'll get to that, is the Fat Tire Clone and the Lemon Drop Pilsner, both of which we've brewed and have had, and both are delicious choices. I was very impressed, Joe, that the vast majority of people who have responded, which is like 90% now of people, I gotta get you the list, Lemon Drop Pilsner.
The Pilsner, right?
The Pilsner. Yeah. Isn't that nuts?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I mean, I don't know. We'll see how many people. I mean, are you giving them the option to do an ale yeast with that, or okay?
Well, no. So only one person requested it. So funny enough, one person requested the lemon drop, and they wanted
with an ale yeast,
with a German ale yeast. He was very specific. Mm-hmm. Our friend Renee. I told him, no problem, anything for you guys. They're VIPs to us. We treat them well. But I think this is one of the most complimentary months that we've had in regards to choices, just because both of them are so appropriate for right now. Like that Fat Tire Clone, I almost thought about getting, like, instead of getting a case of something else, because I'm not taking the full case of the Urquell, I'm going to take like 6 of it or 12 of it, and then I'm going to take 6 or 12 of something else. I thought about getting Fat Tire because when we did that episode of Recipe Recap, it reminded me how good a beer is Fat Tire. Oh my gosh.
It's just like kind of like a classic, you know, amber with a little bit of like that toffee and some complexity going, but it's not over the top with the hops or the malt, or, you know, it's good balanced kind of middle of the road beer for sure.
Exactly. And then that lemon drop, which the last time I had it was at Homebrew Con 2019.
Yeah.
I haven't had it since, and it was. And
I don't think it's gotten brewed here quite.
I don't think it has either. And
we brewed so much of it, you know, we drank a lot of it that weekend.
Drank a lot of it, and then unfortunately we had to dump it. I don't know if you remember that. The bad keg, and that was so heartbreaking. Not just because you had to dump beer, but it was one of the. I mean, we had such good beer on tap. I didn't want to have to dump any of it, and it was It was so embarrassing because it was our friend Michael Ferguson and some other BJCP judge that were walking the floor the 20 minutes before it actually opened, and he came over and he's like, "Oh, show my buddy, y'all's beer has been great this show," and oh, what do you want? Oh, the lemon drop pilsner. Oh, okay, pour it. He sniffs and he's like, "Okay," and then tastes it. Goes, I think you want to check that keg.
That's a good voice impression.
Yeah, I try. Oh, ho, ho. And then I go, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I taste it. I was like, yeah, that doesn't taste right, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be tasting. So Joe, tasted it and was like, oh crap.
Well, I think at first too, because that last day, it was the last day, and the lady who was been helping us out, she did a great job, but she had already hooked up our kegerator that morning, if you remember.
Yep.
And I think she'd switched some of the lines. At first we thought it was my beer and I was like, yeah, that definitely tastes off. Like it was way better than this yesterday. And then at some point, I think it was as the show was actually going on, I poured myself a little bit of the lemon drop because we still had that labeled it on tap. And I was like, wait, this tastes like mosaic.
That's exactly
and then I was
what
like,
happened.
yeah.
Yes.
And then we were like, oh, okay. We poured the other one
that's
out.
why whenever I tried it from the keg and I was like, that is definitely not mosaic Pilsner. When it was actually the lemon drop that went bad.
Right.
And so I was like, that made me more terrified because I was like, this tastes nothing like lemon drop Pilsner. It is off. But it actually had gone bad either way. It wasn't just, I mean,
it got aerated or somehow it got some oxygen. When he was filling the keg or something. It was
stored in such heat, like the temperature variance from, remember they put it in a hot thing until it actually gets there. And it took what, like 7 days on the truck to get to them. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, unless you're driving like we're going to be doing next year, I want to drive to San Diego just because I want to take a bigger booth and more elaborate booth than it would cost a lot to ship. And James said he's on board. Maybe you'll ride with us. And
I'm down.
I think that'd be a fun drive, and we can figure out a way to keep the beer cool until we get there and can store it in the AHA's cooler area that they have for brew, because
or at least a better job of it. It won't be on the road for 8 days.
Exactly. It won't. It will do a better job of it. But anyway, those are back to our Patreon recipes. You could go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour for more information. The yeast is arriving tomorrow, which is what, the 17th. The 17th. And they'll ship out next week, all the recipes. I know 1 or 2 have already shipped out, but all of them will go out next week.
We could probably get them out tomorrow too, but I think we've had it's just getting hot, and so we're trying to avoid getting like a ton of liquid yeast shipped out on Friday, just because over the weekend it doesn't do as well. By Monday or Tuesday, that ice packs are not cold
I can
anymore,
promise you our Patreon members appreciate that, because if I had a nickel for every time where they're like, just sometimes the tracking still doesn't go through, and so they'll be like, I got home and I don't know when it's going to be there, and it was sitting there for a couple days. I didn't see it because I go out my back door. And I was like, yeah, right now it is difficult with the heat. So and I did tell Zach too. I was like, just as soon as they go out, give me the tracking numbers. If they don't go out by email automatically, I'll just send it to these people so they'll know for a fact. But and I understand it's hard too, because our Patreon is growing. It's still growing.
It is.
It's nuts. It's nuts how many people not just listen to the show, as Todd would say.
It was like 8 to 12. It was like, okay, we'll just knock these out real quick.
50,
but now
60,
it's like, okay, this is a little project.
And we're just talking about like for recipe the tier too. Not all of our friends at the, we have friends in all of our tiers. And, that is another good thing to segue to real quick before I let go of this episode. I was just going all over the place. We have glassware that'll be coming in at the end of this month that will go out with your recipe. If you're in the 35, the 25, the 35, or the 50 tier, we'll send one out to you. So the 25, you'll just get a random email from me with the tracking number telling you, because you don't have recipe kits going out. But for 35, it'll go out with your qualifying recipe kit that goes out every other month. And then if you're a $50, it'll go out with as soon as possible with your next recipe kit. They look real good. I saw the proofs. I'm excited about the glassware coming in. We got new shirts in that have been going out with people who are getting the premium welcome pack, and people who had off sizes that we didn't have in stock before. Those have been going out with your recipe kits as well. Mediums, and then I think triple XL was a size that we were out of stock for the longest time. If you need a small, guys, you're probably not really drinking beer. Let's be real. Who wears a small? But like some people are medium because they're all fit and stuff, and like the whole hashtag earn your booze people, they still wear mediums. You goofballs. I see you in your CrossFit running and stuff. But we did have some sizes of the double-ettes and the triple-ettes that we hadn't had in stock for a while, and they are in stock now. So if you were owed it is shipped out to you already. And if you sign up for any of our 30, 25, 35, or $50 tiers, we'll have them for you now in stock. So with all that said, Joe, I'm excited about this episode because I've been wanting to get into the BuzzFeed type of list countdown genre of news for the longest time. Some people may call it clickbait. I call it excited informational headline. I like the idea of packing an episode with relevant information on one topic and just listing the reasons. We used to run a website forever ago called draftbeerinfo.com, and we would do them like 5 reasons to get a kegerator or blah, 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 blah. And I'm joking about how kitschy they are, but the real reason I'm excited about it is because a lot of people write in on this topic. We're discussing reasons to upgrade from Extract to All-Grain Brewing. If I had a nickel for every person that asked about, like, or expressed their intimidation that I do Extract, I'm used to it, I'm still making good beer, I'm thinking about going to All-Grain, but it seems like a lot. Like, we'd have a lot of nickels, right? People call about that and write in about that all the time. And it's,
sure.
And so I had you made a fantastic list. It is 5 points. And I think the title of this episode is 5 reasons to switch from Extract to All-Grain Brewing. So we got the clickbait set. We've got the foundation set. I'm going to hand it over to you, and we'll go through each little point and kind of elaborate on why people who may be on the fence that have already been Extract Brewing, why they should switch over to All-Grain Brewing.
Yeah. Well, I want to start by saying if you're Extract Brewing now and you don't want to switch, this is by no means, we're not here to try and tell you that, you have to by any means. This is just some kind of ideas that came to my mind when I was thinking of my personal jump from Extract to All-Grain, some of the stuff that I've learned along the way. And so again, this is by no means trying to twist anybody's arm and to do All-Grain Brewing. So I've got, like Josh said, I've got like 5 different points we can go through, and some we'll just start with them. So the first one I've got, which is kind of the biggest reason that I made the jump, is the ingredients that you need to brew are going to be cheaper overall. It's more expensive to buy LME and DME, so the light malt or liquid malt and dry malt extract. Is going to be more expensive. The extract, it's already gone through the mashing process. It's then been condensed down to either a syrup or a powder. So it's gone through these processes before it gets to you, and it just ends up costing more than whole grain. So the price is, you're gonna pay a little bit more for the equipment because you're gonna need a little bit more equipment to do All-Grain Brewing, mash tun mainly, or brew in a bag, or at least a bag. But after you have that initial equipment cost covered, each recipe you brew down the line is going to be less expensive. So you, in the long run, you will typically save money. And even that's kind of the main idea.
And even if you're not buying your ingredients for making your own recipes, if they just go on any website, homebrewsupply.com, catconnection.com, they'll see the kits themselves that have already been pre-made are always, $10-ish cheaper than the Extract equivalent.
Yeah.
Because
it depends. Like, if it's like a super big boozy, like stout, you may see something like $10 in difference. But if it's an IPA where you're still having a ton of hops, you're going to see some difference, but it may not be quite to that extent. But Extract recipes on pretty much every site are going to be more expensive than the All-Grain counterpart if they offer both options.
Yeah. And some people, to give a devil's advocate kind of look on it, because like you said at the beginning, I'm glad you touched on it because I didn't even think to put that in the notes. Like, people brew Extract and they love it and they make great beer. And that's all there is to it, right? There's no need for them to switch. We're not, like you said, this isn't we're not a purist in regards to because we've had people who've worked there before, Nancy, who has said
and Brent,
Extract Brewing's not brewing. That was her take on it, and it's like, well, no, it is it's just like some people, they don't have the time, they don't have the brew day time to do the whole mash, right? And it's worth it for them. It's like why my wife asked me why I don't mow our lawn, because the guy charges me $20, babe, and it would take me longer than Todd pays me $4 an hour, but still my time's it would take me a while to mow the lawn. It's just some people don't mind spending the money. And also, though, funny enough, I know most All-Grain homebrewers that do keep some DME anyway in storage for various reasons. So it's still always
starters,
yeah,
and stuff.
It's
yeah.
starters. If you're having gravity issues and you got to boil down or whatever, you know, you can
Sure.
add some DME to make up for it. But it's funny, like
or you end up with like a low efficiency for some reason or another. You can throw some DME there.
Yeah, so it is,
and I mean that kind of ties into buying, you know, even malted barley in bulk. If you've got a local store that you're able to go pick up a couple bags, you know, 50-pound bags of your base malt, or you know maybe a base malt and like a caramel or a Vienna or something like that that you're going to use over and over on the majority of your recipes, you know, you can probably save some money doing it that way. And you know that. Again, you know, that may make you want to buy a mill, so you're going to have some more expensives there. But again, usually people are looking at the long run if you're you know, aiming to continue in the craft. So most of these things make sense for people over time.
Absolutely. So yes, I guess to wrap up the cheaper ingredients, it's especially good if you buy in bulk. If you have the ability to store it appropriately and maybe time it right, because if you're buying bulk in like May in Texas and you don't plan on brewing till like October when it cools down again, that it may have been better for you to buy bulk come, you know, September as when you're actually going to use it, or like you said, have the mill and crush it yourself so that it's as fresh as possible. But yes, cheaper ingredients is an extremely good reason why they should switch. So that is point number one. Point number two, my friend.
More control. And this, you know, this may not be the biggest reason I switched over, but it's become probably my most crucial reason. Recipe design. I've, you know, just working with the website and, trying to get new and exciting recipes onto the website has kind of really, forced me to develop new recipes and, try out different styles that I not a big fan of or don't typically brew. So that's been one of the biggest things. I think having the most control over your brew day, over your exact ingredients that go in, what temperature you're mashing those ingredients at. If you're going to be able, you know, so extract, it's already mashed and it's concentrated down to that extract form. And you don't have as much control on that aspect. So the mashing, if you want to do a step mash or a beta rest or any of that stuff, you can't really do that with extract. James likes to do a similar thing on his alt where he pulls off like the caramel grain, you know, pulls off like the half the grain bed or, you know, at least a half of a 5-gallon bucket and kind of roasts that and darkens it up and then introduces it back into the mash a couple times throughout the hour. So, you know, none of that you're going to be able to do with extract. And the other thing is, you know, you have like dry malt, you have like light extract, you have dark extract, you may have amber and Munich. You're going to have a pretty good variety of extract, but it's not quite, you're going to be limited to, you know, those 8 or so varieties of extract versus making up your entire grain bill exactly, you know, with Belgian Pilsner malt versus German versus American. You know, you're going to have some of those exact options to your kind of, you know, at your play. So
yeah, control is one of the things that I think I've noticed as well when in the Reddit forums or on Homebrew Talk that people say that's why I moved. It was all about recipe creation and like you said, the decoction that James does during alt beer and some pilsners, I think he does them, or some other lagers, he'll do decoctions, but he would tell you like that is what makes it his Dusseldorf alt, right? Like it's hard to get that
special little touch. It's hard to get that out of pouring in some extract.
Exactly.
Sure.
And now my dad and I have done the extract version of the True to Style alt beer twice, and it's a wonderful recipe. But like you said, there's something. It was like we did an episode of Recipe Recap, me, Todd, and James, where Todd did, I think it was a pale ale. It might have been
my first pale.
What was it? I don't remember. I think that was what it was, and he gave it to us in both versions, right? His all-grain, his extract. Both were phenomenal, but it was like this je ne sais quoi, as they would say, and like it was something. It's hard to summarize, but it was just like the body was different, the mouthfeel was just different, to where it was just that much more pleasant. Where if that's what you're looking for with your brews that you're doing yourself, all grain is a best path to achieve what. If you're trying, like if there's something specific out of your brew you're trying to get, all grain gives you that best chance at achieving it. Like if you're like, oh, I just want a creamier mouthfeel, it's a little bit easier to make the changes during mash or water to grain ratio or whatever. Well, water to grain wouldn't have anything to do with mouthfeel necessarily, but you know what I mean? Like during the brewing process of the all grain experience is when you could make changes and to affect the final brew. That extract, like you said, it is just kind of made for you in that extracted either dry or liquid.
Right.
And you're trying to stuck with it has a negative connotation because it's not stuck with it. I mean, you're still going to make good beer.
Still a great product.
Still
right.
a great
Exactly. I was just going to say, like, this could lead perfectly into skipping a point and going to the fourth. It could lead perfectly into the taste point, because as you just mentioned, and a lot of the people around here perceive all grain to taste a little bit better. That doesn't mean you can't make good tasting extract beer. It just means if you're going to brew the exact same recipe side by side, we, at least here generally, it's a pretty, probably somewhat of a hot topic, but we generally have a consensus around here that we tend to like the all grain version a bit more. And it's like you said, it's sometimes hard to put the exact wording on why, but you know, sometimes it has to do with the body and sometimes the hop presence. I think, you know, when you're doing extract, even though it seems like it should be easier to replicate, I find sometimes it is harder to replicate because a lot of times you're doing concentrated boils. So you're boiling like 3 to 4 gallons at a time. And sometimes boiling that less than your total volume, you may have a chance to over caramelize with it concentrated like that, or to lose bitterness actually, because you're boiling the same hops at the same time. If you're not adjusting for doing like a recipe like that, extract versus all grain, you're going to actually add in fresh, clean water at the end, and you're going to, all your liquid is not going to have that same IBU because you're adding unbittered liquid in at the end. So there's certain things that you do have to take into consideration, extract brewing like that. If you're doing it a side-by-side all grain recipe versus an extract recipe, the same recipe. So I think, you know, it may not make as much sense as it should, but sometimes I feel like it is easier to replicate those consistency issues. It's easier to get those locked down doing all grain, again, because you have more control, even though it's more work and it's more, you have to pay more attention to detail. You end up, if you do check all the, you know, all the boxes and you dot all your I's, like you do have, in my experience, at least, you do have an easier time, or I've had an easier time kind of having better consistent results.
James says the same thing, and yes, you're right. If I would have read the notes, I wouldn't have gone over to point 4. So this is now point 3. Taste is what Joe segued us into. But yeah, Todd and James, I've both heard say the same thing, where it's like, well, a few things. One, the taste from the all grain, they do wholeheartedly believe is different enough and better enough to justify all the amount of money they've spent on equipment and the time for a brew day. Because it is, you know, we have to be very transparent in saying, like, it's a rabbit hole of expenses you can go down as you're brewing, which I won't go all the way to that bottom point yet. We'll get to there. But, you know, taste, I think enough people would tell you, like, hey, we're not just trying to cop out answer and justify why we spent all this money. It actually is noticeable enough. That's why we're doing it. That's why we're all, because who wouldn't want a 3-hour brew day as an extract, right?
Sure.
I think the quickest my dad and I from starting cleaning stuff to done for the day, we're done cleaning stuff and the brew day's over, has been like 3 hours. I think that was the quickest.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to do that with all grain.
You can't do that with all grain unless you got your water ready overnight and you're using like a grain father that's programmed to get it to temperature for you. And
still good luck, you know.
Still good luck, exactly. You just can't do that. But again, I think this isn't a reason on here, but I'll just go off the trail because I do that every episode anyway. I think that's part of why I like all grain brewing too, is the experience of it. It feels it's enjoyable. We make a day around it, basically, where, you know, like you've been to my pop's place where we're out there and we start at like 11. So that way, my lights, I'm not having a seizure over here, people. The lights are crapping out on me. I wonder if, we just had a power outage. Oh, interesting. I'm on. Yeah.
Lightning strikes.
Yeah.
The thunder rolls.
Lightning crashes And no mother. I'm gonna turn. What if I turn them off? How interesting is that? It's still, here's the funny thing. It's still all recording. And because all of my stuff here is on power supply backups, that's why I haven't lost
It's
you
just
yet.
kicking it back on.
I bet it's 100. What is it here in Kyle? Yeah, it's 100.
Over 100.
It's 100
Yeah.
degrees. I bet you our Perdinales Electric Company is doing some rolling brownouts or my AC
Possibly.
killed electricity.
You know, something else I didn't actually have on our outline, but I thought of it when you were talking about how we were both talking about how for some reason we always seem to enjoy the all grain versions of recipes we brew the same side by side. And I'm thinking a lot not a lot, but some may do with, we don't honestly know, like there's like lot numbers and there's no expiration dates from my understanding, or at least that I've seen, but on like the DME and LME, like we don't know how long that was sitting in the warehouse from our suppliers before it got to us, so the freshness of that LME and DME can have an impact, but we're not cracking that grain until several hours before we start mashing. So, that may be some of that full-hearted whole flavor that you're kind of getting in all grain over extract too.
Yeah, that is a real good point. You're right. I didn't think about that. We are all right. So that I jumped over to taste. Let's go back. So this is now 0.4, and which is, I think, this is the deepest kind of rabbit hole people find themselves in as they're starting to brew, especially with the advent of, or the invention of the internet, rather, because of forums. But
YouTube,
YouTube, Reddit, and Homebrew Talk, and everyone has their own opinion. But your fourth point is expansion of knowledge.
Yeah. So, and it may not be. It may not always be somewhat sought after, but it's going to be required. If you go to All-Grain Brewing, you're going to have to know a little bit more, because there's just intrinsically more in steps involved. There's more equipment that you're going to be using. There's more science behind All-Grain Brewing. A lot of people compare it baking like a boxed cake versus a cake 100% from scratch, so there's a difference between those two styles of cooking. Is the same with the two styles of brewing. So it really does. It's been kind of the biggest thing for me as far as like working at Homebrew Supply, especially talking with customers and expanding my own knowledge base, like learning from our customers, doing research for them and finding out stuff, on my own. And again, watching YouTube videos and chatting on Reddit and that kind of thing. It does, everybody's got their own way of doing things, and everybody's, got their own 2 cents about how things should be done. But, at the end of the day, there is a lot of science behind a lot of the way we do certain things. So it's important to know those things. And, it's helpful while you're brewing to know why you're doing something and not just kind of doing it because that's the way you were told to do it, So I think that's a big part of All-Grain Brewing, and that ends up leading into you being able to develop your own recipes and not, just brewing something off of a website or something that, your buddy threw together. You've got these handful of brews under your belt, and you've used these, different malts in together, and you want to, you've got this idea kind of festering that you want to kind of use these 2 malts together with this hop, and, maybe this yeast is really going to kind of back it, put it all together. So that, I think that is some of the most fun in brewing I've had, is just kind of doodling around on Brewer's Friend or Beersmith or whatever program, and kind of cranking numbers and really kind of, messing around.
Yeah, and I think too, just by default, we could say you're going to expand your knowledge. There's no way around it if you stick with it. Like with most hobbies, right? I find I used to be a real hobbyist on a ton of things growing up. It's one of the reasons my dad wouldn't pay for guitar lessons for me when I was like 12 and started playing, because he's like,
"You're too many activities.
You're just gonna drop it like you did everything else, boy." Yeah. And but yeah, showed you pop. Now I'm playing on top. I'm singing Friends in Low Places on Todd's patio while we're drinking whiskey drinks. So joke's on you, Dad. But I do know with brewing, I learn something all the time, like almost every brew day. And also too, what's funny, I agree, there is a science to it. You damn near become like a chemist at some point, but also there's some things that just work out and it's unexplainable, but that's just your system, right? Like with my cooler brew system that my dad and I use, we know that if we're targeting 152 for the water that we really need to pour it in at 159. And there goes the power completely. I'm waiting for the electricity to actually go out on our Wi-Fi. My neighbors, speaking of expansion of knowledge, my neighbors were posting in the neighborhood that PEC is having in and out power outages. So everything
so seems to make more sense
in
than
the dark.
Lights.
Yeah. You can tell what in my office is not on a power backup and what is. Thankfully, the Wi-Fi is, so we can keep talking. But my laptop is off because it's not on backup. So you'll have to give me the points after this. But what I was getting at is I think people, what keeps me in the hobby and what keeps a lot of people in the hobby and enjoying it is the community part of it, but also the knowledge part, like knowing I do this and here's what the results are going to be. Oh, the sugars do this to the beer and this is the result I'm going to get from it. Or whatever the case may be.
If I mash at 160 versus 154, this is going to be the end result. It's going to end up being a little sweeter, or I'll have a little bit more unfermentable sugars. Yeah,
and knowing that I'm not the smartest person in the world, people realize that as I look creepily here, like I'm from a horror movie. God, this is terrible. But anyway, I think that even there are some things that I can't explain scientifically why it is the way it is, but you can at least know if you're brewing like, oh yeah, this is why I have to hit my temperatures correctly because otherwise I'm going to get this. Or here's why I don't introduce oxygen to the wort post pitching of the yeast or into fermentation. Like you may not know the exact science behind it, but you'll know that cardboard taste happened because you splashed the beer, transferring it from secondary to a keg. I don't know who did that ever in their life, but
and there's a lot of times where you don't know, especially starting out when you're doing extract a lot of times, or even if you've just made the jump to all grain, or even if you've been brewing all grain for years, there's a lot of times where something went wrong at some point and you don't know what caused this off flavor or this, issue with your beer, the color, a weird color, but the more you do learn and the more you've got experience, like the more you're able to identify something right there on the fly and adjust and, get that add some cold water. If you somehow forgot to turn the heat off your mash and it's over 160, you could throw a gallon of cold water and try and get it down, and there's things like that you can do on the fly, like I said, and kind of either save a brew day, because we've said this on the show 100 times that it's not a brew day unless something goes wrong. There's always going to be issues and stuff that happens. So I think the wider, the more vast your knowledge is on brewing in general, the more you can kind of make those tweaks and adjustments during brew day and make better beer overall.
And you would think that this is a brew day with how my office is going. I have the flashlight on me. Now I really look like I'm telling scary stories over here. So the brew day, this is terrible, but the show must go on and we're going to wrap it up. We got one more point, the fifth point, which is a lot of guys will get into this with the best intentions of hey, I just like brewing my own beer. And then the bug bites them, Joe, and they are like 2 years into brewing and they're like, I'm ready to open the brew pub. I want to start the brewery. So your fifth point is that it gets you the closest to pro brewing.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's not every home brewer that has that kind of fantasy festering, but a lot of people do. And I mean, I can't lie. It was my old roommate who I started brewing with, and we had that dream, we had a name picked out, and it was like starting to get our tap list, organized and stuff. But, it was definitely some hopeful, some ambitious dreams for sure. So, but like you said, it's the closest style to professional brewing that you can do at home. And so it would definitely get you the most prepared to make that jump. Or, maybe if you don't open up your own brewery and you want to get on at a local, micro brewery or even a big brewery, any kind of homebrew experience, it may not be the most beneficial on your resume, but it will definitely help, especially if you're, they can tell you're passionate about it. If you start off in the cellar, maybe they don't have a hot side ready for you quite yet, but if you've got homebrew experiences and you're hanging around after hours and volunteering, I guarantee you can move your way up in a brewery. You just make sure people know that you want to brew and you've got a real passion for it.
And understanding the brew process that, like, again, from the previous points of like expansion of knowledge and all that, it is so important because you're going to have a foot in the door already where you can tell them like, yeah, look, I've never commercially brewed in my life, but I've been home brewing for a couple years. I have a solid understanding of the process and I'm willing to do it. Because like you said, a lot of the times you're not going to start off right as a brewer. At least in the Austin area, it seems like a lot of guys start off in production. Packaging, cleaning. I know guys that started off cleaning kegs for a living, and because I'll say like, oh, I started cleaning kegs for this job, and like, oh, no way, like Saint do this. Oh, no, they're corny kegs, much easier. I say that some of these breweries have really nice keg cleaning operations. Mine was Todd's garden hose and a back porch, but but closest to pro, what I like is that we really are. It's just a micro scale of what professional brewing is, especially like the 3-tier setup like Todd has is very close to what they're doing in regards to the vessel. It's just a volume difference, right? But we've had professional brewers on the show who have assured us scaling up is just bigger equipment and more ingredients. Like we've had people tell us like it if you mess up is a lot more consequence. Pouring a barrel, even as low as a barrel, is a lot more than pouring 10 gallons, right? Like it's a lot more heartbreaking and a lot more expensive. But if the bug bit you as your Extract Brewing, wholeheartedly, you should switch over to All-Grain Brewing to have a better understanding before, because I'm not going to say it's never happened, but I'm willing to bet $5 to someone out there that there has not been a microbrewery or brew pub that exists on Extract brewed beer, right? I mean, that's pretty safe to say, right? Or am I chewing on the
think
wrong?
It would be hard pressed to find one that does exclusively Extract Brewing. They may do that for pilot batches, or I doubt that would be even a case. But I just hate to say that it's impossible, because getting into this business a handful of years ago, I've quickly found out that there are a lot of wineries that buy the wine kits that we used to sell a lot of, maybe not on that size, but they'd buy the concentrated juice like that. And, I don't know if there's anything necessarily wrong with that. Musting your own grapes and growing your own grapes and having them grow for 5 years so they can actually get the maturity they need to be good wine grapes. So, I mean, obviously beer and wine are apples to oranges, but, just for lack of a better sense, there's ways to get around, doing wine the exact original way that it's all, has been done, in France and stuff forever. But, I would say it would probably be hard pressed to find a good brewery, brewing on a decent size scale that is doing all extract.
That's really what I meant too, is mainly the scale. I can't imagine doing that kind of scale and how expensive that would get for them. Like that's going to be like a $10 pint, man. Like maybe not. I mean, I'm exaggerating a lot, but I'm just saying, like, it seems like it would be.
I mean, at the same margins, yeah, maybe,
You're right. You're right. If we follow their margins, you're absolutely right. But yes, pro brewing, if that is your goal, which it doesn't have to be. Again, like you prefaced it at the beginning, and I'd like to end just emphasizing, like, there are people that we know closely who only extract brew, and they make great beer, and they're happy with it, and they've always got beer flowing on their lines, and I'm still going to go drink their beer. It's not like nothing's changing about that, right? Yeah. But
we're not trying to twist your arm into it, but we're bringing up some, to us at least, valid points of what you may benefit if you do end up switching.
And if you don't, God bless you. Extract Brewing is great. We have a lot of members of our Patreon who specifically only do extract because of time constraint, because they love brewing, but they don't have the space for all-grain brewing, where extract is easier on a stovetop. It is easier to brew a batch, or small batch brewing with extract is extremely easy. And as a man of convenience, my wife calls me lazy, but I'm a man of efficiency and convenience. I get it. My dad and I have brewed the last 3 batches extract, mainly for time. It's like we want to start. It's so hot. It's so damn hot.
Yeah.
It's so hot. My electricity can't stay on here in my office. I'm in the dark.
Like you said, you don't have a whole day to dedicate to brewing. So
we could start an extract batch in the evening when it's cooled down, and we didn't start at 9 p.m. because that's finally when it cools down, and be done, and wrap up around midnight. And that was fun. It's a fun night. We haven't actually done evening batches. We've done early morning batches to beat the heat. But yeah, it's just we want people brewing more is the end game for us with like what we're doing with Homebrew Happy Hour, because brewing is a craft we think is worth preserving, and certainly we think is worth promoting. So I appreciate you coming on, doing the show with all this crap that's happening. You hear it says I have 18 minutes left of power before this shuts down. So I'm going to wrap up the show. Mr. Ermis, I really do appreciate your time, my friend, coming and doing this. And I'll see you next week. And next week, we need to do that episode of Recipe Recap and have you on it. And that'll be your first time on that show, I think.
It will, yeah.
Look at us. So we're going to have a fun time. So thank you again for your time. I will see you soon.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Likewise. And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, HomebrewSupply.com, for supporting us and the homebrewing community. You can go to HomebrewSupply.com, use our promo code HHH, and you'll get 5% off your order. I'm having to do this by memory because my laptop's dead. Sorry, guys. On behalf of the absent Todd Burns, James Carlson, but the present Ladik Joe Ermis, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.